joke.
Now all we need to do is record something that doesn't suck. To start recording at like 7 a.m. so we're a little less cynical.
Funny is usually harder.
Funny's way harder. Video works, audio works.
It's $3,500 chair.
Woo!
Hello, and you are listening to the Think Big and Code Small podcast. My name is Dan Horton, and I am joined with my friend and co-host, Chris Westerhold. This episode is sponsored by Codecrafters. In this week's episode, we speak with Port's CEO and co-founder Zohar. He shares his experiences and inspiration behind starting his company. We dive into the product mindset and its role in developing a successful developer portal. We also discuss the importance of engaging developers directly into that portal creation. We dive into a product mindset and its role in developing successful developer portals. How the importance of engaging developers directly into the development of the portal is critical and will allow us to build the highest impact portal possible. Zohar also shares how Port leverages customized building blocks and templates to keep that platform future-ready and scalable for the organizations as they leverage it. And we continue with the discussion on organizations and where they need to start, why a foundational data set is so critical, and where scorecards fit in. It's going to be a good show. Let's get on it.
Thanks for joining us today, Zohar. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you as always. For anybody that doesn't know, Zohar is the CEO and co-founder of Port, which is one of the kind of, in my opinion, one of the premier kind of developer portal platforms out there in the market. So it's nice to have you here today.
Nice to be here, Chris, and always pleasure to talk and to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I always like to kind of start with is what got you, why Port? What got you into the dev portal space? How did you kind of get interested in this kind of area overall?
Yeah. So, just to give a little bit of background on why we started Port and how we ended up in this beautiful market. So I started my journey as a software developer for a large enterprise, and my business partner and CTO, Jonathan, he was the head of platform engineering for this organization. Just a disclaimer, platform engineering was not a term back then. It was like a DevOps infrastructure something. So Jonathan, he was the head of platform engineering essentially for this organization. And as a developer, when I needed things that are ops related, like I needed to create a new resource in the cloud, or I needed to ask a question about some service that someone owns, or I just wanted to know, some information about the runtime, I had to create a lot of tickets, and I had to, to go through many people and tribal knowledge, and it was a nightmare for us as engineers. Yeah. By the way, it's like 2,000 engineers, spending lots of time, chasing after some DevOps with the knowledge, right? And Jonathan was assigned to solve this problem. So he started a solution called America. America was essentially the internal developer portal for this organization. So what they did with America is they decided that everything should be in one place for the entire R&D. And they wanted to make themselves sufficient, and they wanted to make engineers like myself kind of like to be able to roam freely and to focus on my work, which is like to code and to develop features and to make the entire software development lifecycle intuitive for me as a developer. And this is what they did with America. And once they released it and we started to use it as engineers, it completely changed, the way that we think about, developing software. And it changed the DNA of our R&D as a whole. Everything from, bringing features to production or to interact with the cloud or, things, how do I develop code that stand with my organizational governance requirements or security requirements or quality requirements. Everything was inside of America. And we we had some very naive thought, when we started the company, before developer portal was a term or no one knew what it was. We said, we believe that other organizations also need America. So we started to talk with many organizations, and we found out that this is a huge problem for many organizations. And we started Port. We decided that that we want to reshape and to redefine the way developers developing software and shipping software and owning code. And all of a sudden, the entire industry started to realize, thanks to to Backstage, Spotify's project, and the maturity of the market, that internal developer portal is critical to scale the R&D and to scale as a business. And we were fortunate enough to be kind of with our vision on how it should look like and what should be inside. And this is a very exciting journey for us so far.
Yeah. So where did you guys kind of start when it came to that? So you had built America, where, I get this question all the time. Where do I begin? What should I focus on? And where did you find that kind of initial set of value when it came to kind of building out, whether it was America or even the beginning part of Port?
Right. Yeah, I think that the nice thing about America, and the reason why it was widely adopted by the developers within this organization, is the fact that when they designed the product of the portal, they thought about what are the most critical pains that we want to solve for the R&D, and not what will be cool for the R&D to have, right? It's two different things. So they maintained a very strict product mindset that I believe that, also today at Port, we are big believers in this approach, which is to think like a product manager. And they try to focus on three main factors of every feature they put into America. First, how many people will benefit from this feature? Is it just for one specific team, or is it for, a wider audience? What is the percentage of people that will be using it? The second is, what is the potential value that it will solve? Is it a nice to have thing, or does it solve a real pain for the developers? So they also put this metric in mind when they design the product. And the third thing that they kind of thought about is, how hard would it be to develop this feature? We want to be agile. They wanted to have fast deliveries for the customers, the developers. So they decided that they want to start with an MVP that includes features that do not take so long, right? So these are the main things that they put in mind, and they spoke with the developers. They asked them what are the pains that they would like to solve. They spoke with the field and got those things that are painful. One of them was, adding a secret to a service. It's it can be, but basically it can be, a wide variety of use cases. It depends on the organization, but being able to customize the experience that is, relevant to the pains that you feel as an organization it was critical for the success of America. So I think these are the things that,
that's really interesting. And, something as simple as kind of secrets management wouldn't rise to the top of a lot of lists for people. When I talk to, lots of engineering leaders, the thing I need to solve is secrets management. Another one that tends to come up is contract testing and those kinds of things. Those are actually problems that people really have that they're looking for a solution for, and not the other way around. And you see so many people, go do the easy thing, go stand this thing up, go give them all of these features that aren't really all that useful in the end. They're useful, but they're not life changing. And one of the other things that I see quite a bit is there's this usefulness hurdle of if it's not useful to them, they're not going to change their behavior. And if they don't change their behavior, they're not really impacting the organization at all. And it's almost a weird thing of just trying to get people to rethink that. So when it came to, I love the fact that you talk about, product thinking and everything else like that. How do you, if you think about the the organization and the people that tend to kind of stand up dev portals. How do you think about injecting product thinking into that? Do you, should you have, a product manager, product managers? How would you try to, give people any kind of guidance around, here's how, product's great. You should be thinking about it this way, but here's more of, impactful ways that you can maybe do, next week or right now.
Right. Yeah. I think that the way to kind of like promote this mindset as a team is not necessarily by hiring like a product manager. It can be great to do that, but I think that always thinking about the developers that essentially needs to use it and involve them into the process as early as possible. It will give you like 80% of the answers, right? Like once you involve them, just involve the developers and you will get the feedbacks and you will start to practice this mindset is very, very important. I feel that if you don't talk to the developers on, I would say like a weekly basis from any shape or form of communication, if it's like a question about like the feature that you released or just like, meeting them physically. So something might be wrong. And this is like a thing that I would say will, it will take your hand and will lead you to the success of proper adoption. Yeah. On the other side, I think that the product should also allow you to own the portal from a product perspective. So, the portal should be, I would say, kind of like composable in a way that allows you to implement those things that are mostly important for your developers, right? So it's important it doesn't matter if you use like an open source or a commercial solution, being able to, solve exactly, as we call it in our company, like we say, like solve exactly. So the product should also allow you to do that. And, you want to be able to have this kind of freedom to do so. I think those two things are critical to promote that. And product manager is definitely something that can help a lot. But I also think that for starting this initiative of platform engineering, just let engage the developers and give them a sense of ownership on this initiative as well.
Yeah, it's a mindset, not a role. And,
exactly.
Having a person there to do the role, fine. But if you have that good kind of product thinking, platform thinking, system thinking, whatever kind of words you want to use, that's going to help drive that out. And what, as you kind of went through and you're thinking about that, there's a lot of kind of leadership challenges that can come from that kind of thinking and re-architecting and changing the way that it drives. Is there any, kind of things you might have learned through that whole process around kind of leadership mindsets or ways that, leaders should be helping to engage that community outside of even just a product mindset?
Yeah, I think that from a leadership perspective, being able to define, what are you kind of like expect to achieve once you have a developer portal in place that, with a team that has this product mindset, right? So what are you trying to achieve from this developer portal, and what are those metrics that you would like to keep track of and make sure that you are on the right direction? So what we often see that, many teams want to keep track of, like many leadership people want to keep track of metrics like, DORA metrics or space metrics, which are excellent, but sometimes you also want to keep track of metrics that are relevant to you, so you don't have to kind of like go with a specific metric that is an industry standard. Sometimes it can be something that that if you keep track of this specific metric will be a lead indicator into an improvement that you expect from your perspective. So what we often do, like, when we start to work with with customers, or when we give at least our advice, is to think about, what will be those key results that you expect to see when you roll out a developer portal. So it can be anything from, onboarding developers faster, or it can be things that are related to deployment frequency or security related things. And the data, and the data about this, the improvement can be either from collecting metrics from, different tools or stuff. But I will go back again to, the most simple concept. Just ask developers. And there are some great tools that, that you can use in order to serve developers, like GetDX. So you can, and we see things working beautifully with, with these two concepts together, kind of like, reaching out to developers, get their feedback on things that matters to you, and try to understand if you're on the right direction from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Very rarely have I ever come across a group that didn't know where the problems were, like an engineering group. They know where the problems are, and you just need to ask them and talk to them and say, look, just tell me where the issue is. And, I see people get lost in metrics, and they kind of think about, what I actually want is good metrics. And no, what you actually want to do is deliver good business value. You want to deliver better, faster, for your end customers, not I have a dashboard that's all green. And it's easy to kind of get lost when it comes to some of that.
Exactly.
So when I think of, kind of Port in general, thinking about the, kind of the stuff you've put together, how did you, I know you've like Port's really, really customizable. One of the things that I love about it, it's kind of low code, no code. You can change a lot of things. How did you, was that something that you kind of initially thought of and you designed in, really having it be super dynamic, or have you gone through a lot of iterations as you kind of started and moved through kind of your initial phases?
Yeah. So basically, since we had the chance to, to build a developer portal in the past, and, and our team, I would say, like, quotes and quotes, did all the mistakes once, we realized that a developer portal is not a tool that you buy or build and that's it. It's a living creature, right? It changes, like the business changes. So everything changes beneath that. So developer portal, have more requirements over time. Things are changing. And this is why we find out that if you do not build a developer portal that is future proof, you'll find yourself, kind of like trying to understand how to meet the demand of a developer portal with the pace of the business. And this is why we realized that in order to create a developer portal that can be used by the world, and can be used by every different organization, we need to be able to provide them with the building blocks that they can use to create a developer portal that, one, is very easy to set up and to get into an MVP. Second, it needs to be future proof and, stay with you for the long run, and achieve your use cases from an end-to-end perspective. So this is why when we started Port, we started with creating the building blocks, building blocks like, the software catalog blueprints and the self-service actions building blocks and scorecards and so on. But what we did recently is taking all those building blocks and giving you an out-of-the-box experiences that you can install in one click. So the 0 to 1 is out of the box, and then you can take it into the places that you would like to achieve, going from there. So it was intentionally from day one to create this composability to make sure that we can fit into different enterprises, different mid-market companies, and to be able to give them the power to be the true owners from a product perspective.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, because before we were talking about metrics and where to begin and all of those pieces, you never know exactly what the problem's going to be or where you're trying to go, and that's always kind of one of the biggest challenges I see with kind of portals in general, and trying to design them and architect them and drive them forward. So you talked a little bit about just kind of that one click. Can you give me a little bit more about that? Because, what did you actually release here recently?
Yeah. So actually, what we find out that, essentially, many organizations are different from one another, but the use cases that they face are pretty common, right? Like, I I want to create the experience to bring a feature to production. And by the way, Chris, this is like from one of our past conversations. This is an insight that you shared with me and made a great impact. So we realized that the use cases are pretty common for many organizations, but being able to start with something with the use case and take it from there is something that we must provide with the solution. So what we recently allows is to have a plug and play kind of like template installation of use cases. So you want to bring a feature to production template, or you would like to kind of like to enrich your catalog with security related aspects, or if you want to manage feature flags from the portal. So we give you some kind of a template that you can get started with, and then you can take this template and customize it into what you would like to achieve. And this is something that we built on top of the building blocks that we provide, which create like a 360 approach to the developer portal to get you into 0 to 1 very fast. And then 1 to 10 is something that you can keep on iterating and building more things that are relevant to you. But we want to, it's I would say like a time to market from a portal perspective, right? Like we want to get you fast in front of the developers.
Yeah, there's always this kind of interesting dichotomy of, you're not the same as everyone else. There's definitely different organizational challenges you're going to have, but there is a lot of overlap. And,
right.
In the end, we're all trying to develop software. And
exactly
the nature of developing software is relatively close to the same, regardless of how different you might do it from a technology perspective or a language perspective or whatever. But when I think of kind of those different ways you can start, where do you see a lot of people actually starting when they kind of stand up port? Are they, or even just in developer portals in general? I know a lot of people talk about the service catalog. Other people talk about the, kind of self-service. Other people talk about trying to pull in data and everything else. Just from your experience and talking to everybody, where do you kind of see people starting?
Right. So I would say like, in a way, all of the above, and that's fine. Right, because you start with your initial pain. So we do see people, organizations starting from self-service perspective. They want to eliminate the number of tickets that are on the DevOps table, and they would like to make developers more self-sufficient from a self-service perspective. We see, and inside self-service can be many different use cases. Like I want to simplify the work against the cloud. I want to provision cloud resources. I want to abstract away the complexity of infrastructure as code and to allow developers to create Terraform resources with a click, and so on and so forth. So self-service is definitely a very strong one. Like we see this a lot because it translates into, tickets or tribal knowledge or outdated docs, and many organizations want to to automate that. The second thing that we see is around I would say being able to streamline the process of ensuring quality and security and governance issues while developing code in a way that that gives developers what they need to know to shift left issues away from production. So things like scorecards and initiatives that that are part of the SDLC process is definitely something that we see as a good place to start with. Although it's important when you do go this route of putting the right scorecards and initiatives, to make sure that when you do it, you give developers also the value that they expect. Otherwise, they will feel like you are trying to put them on some weird guardrails, and it might not come very friendly from a developer perspective. So it needs to come with something that gives them very good reason or value. And we usually advise to bring it with an additional aspect of self-service or a software catalog that also gives them something that can really help them. And also the software catalog, which is, some kind of a visibility into the lifecycle of development, being able to know who is on call right now, who owns this service. a strong use case that we see is also inner sourcing initiatives to promote collaboration and to promote code sharing and making sure that you are not duplicating code or rewriting something, write against something that is already written. So we see many of those use cases, and it's hard for me because I love each one of them, but we see them equally distributed across the industry. I feel like and I think it's a natural thing that to see. Yeah,
I think a lot of it depends on where you are as an organization, from like a maturity perspective, from your product perspective, are you in some kind of hyper growth model, or are you 100-year-old bank that's just trying to, keep their app updated or whatever. And each of those organizations is going to have a very different problem that they're going to need to solve in very different ways. But I'd like to dig down into the scorecards a little bit, because I think this is an area where I think people miss some of the value that can come from these, because they're so dynamic. And, everything from, if you think about just basic scorecard, okay, well, I can grade myself. Well, that can be a bunch of things, like how, if you're thinking about like everything from a deployment gatekeeper to, understanding what your fragmentation looks like across your engineering ecosystem. If I have 100 Java microservices, how close do they actually look? Am I hitting, the security, all of the checks that I would expect? And I think there's a lot of use cases there that people haven't quite considered when it comes to, building a good foundational data set to be able to make good decisions on. So yeah.
I'll add to what you said, that I think that when it comes to the scorecards and to grading your software components, you have so many verticals inside, right? Like you have security and you have quality and uptime and health and on call. Like you have so many things that different perspectives to think about the scorecards, and so many tools under each category, and there is so much power to not only to just to block the developers if something goes wrong. Like we also want to help them actually. So when you have those the data into the portal coming from all these tools from a scorecard perspective, and you have the context of the actual SDLC, like the runtime versions and who is on call right now, then you can create new types of experiences, right? Just for example, right? Like you can create some kind of a behavior which does not exist today, that if I make a deployment for a new version as a developer, I can already ask what is the rollback version that I would like to choose if a scorecard degrades, right? And then, you pay back to the developers, saving them, waking up in the middle of the night, just by, empowering the data coming inside the scorecards into the context that you have for the SDLC, and create a whole new experience for a developer. So I think developer portals are not just about, improving the lives of developers, but actually changing the life of developers as we think about them today. So this is just like, how I see the future of it.
I totally agree. I mean, in the end, it goes back to that usefulness hurdle I talked about a minute ago. This thing is very useful because it's going to stop my phone from ringing at 2:00 in the morning, potentially. And you're allowing for automation to be able to come through. If this thing degrades, if this happens, trigger this thing to happen, and be able to then hopefully self-recover. And if that doesn't work, then pick up the phone and call me. And, that's when you think of like real levels of resiliency, you need to have that kind of data and a platform to be able to pull that data together and to action on it in a meaningful way.
Yeah. And I think that, I absolutely agree. And I think that the power of scorecards is not just to be like an officer for the developers, but we need to think about scorecards in a way that actually brings back the value, to the developer, incentivizing them to, to enjoy the power of scorecards. And, essentially, the business, of course, will enjoy the benefits of thinking about scorecards as a positive thing is very important.
Well, I agree. In the distributed nature of our current, the way that we like to develop, whether it's in the cloud, you have distributed systems, you have all of these different things. The knowledge that we used to have going back not that long ago is gone in some ways, because you used to have everything together.
Exactly.
All of my code was here. Everything is in this kind of little box, and now it's everywhere. And how can you keep track of that in a meaningful way is getting more and more challenging. And, being able to leverage all your DevSecOps tools, observability and tracing and monitoring and all of these things is great, but you need to be able to pull that together. And I think scorecards is an amazing way of being able to do that. Right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that it gives you some kind of a mental framework on what you should bring into the portal. How should you think about the things that you'd like to to keep track or to maintain different metrics for, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So when it kind of looking out into the future a little bit, where do you what do you kind of see as some of the new trends coming up, or things that, that kind of have your attention around kind of developer experience or dev portals or kind of platform engineering as a whole? What are some of the things that you might be hearing about?
Yeah. So one thing that, kind of like, I'm excited about is thinking about the developer experience, with AI and how it will impact the developers' day-to-day lives. So of course we have GitHub Copilot, which, when I first saw it, it was like a magic. I couldn't believe it's real. But when we look into the future, which is not really the future anymore, it's the reality. But when we think, I'm excited about thinking about developer portals when you have, when you enable AI capabilities into it, and how will the experience of developers look like from a portal perspective, right? Like how self-service actions would look like, how scorecards would look like, and how the developers will experience a portal, in the near term, short term period. I think that, the interface of developers with the portal which will be much more natural, and the portal will become a little bit more of a back-end thing that, kind of like get the prompts from the developer on whatever they would like to see or know or do. And the UI of the portal will be a little bit more simplified and more abstracted. And the portal will become some kind of I would say like, a DevOps OS for holding the context of the SDLC, connecting to all the different tools, connecting to all the different runners and CI/CD and, those kind of things. And also the automations, and the experience with the portal will be more natural, and the portal will be more, I would say, like a backend thing that is supercharged with AI to give the developers what they needed from the first place. I also see a potential when it comes to a machine-to-machine potential with developer portals, and again with AI as well. Being able to I think that also machines suffer from cognitive load when it comes to CI/CD processes that need to get some context about the SDLC. So you've mentioned like gating deployments. It's some kind of a cognitive load of a CD pipeline that needs to make a deployment, and it needs to ask someone, can I make this deployment or not? So I think that, developer portals will also go towards a machine-to-machine use cases when it comes to remediations, when it comes to run books, when it comes to these kind of things, and also from simplifying CI/CD processes and so on and so forth. So I think that those two things are kind of like into the future of portals and platform engineering.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. We're going to move from being kind of, proactive to being a little bit more reactive, and not in a bad way. Because before you used to have to anticipate, oh, well, this might be a problem. That might be a problem. I'm going to build a dashboard around this to track these metrics as they come in, and to be able to have this kind of graphical representation of data,
right,
where you're probably not going to have to do that quite so much anymore. You need to get the data correct, have your data pulling in from all of these different areas, building out your data model, and kind of having that kind of knowledge there, and being able to query that knowledge is going to be much easier. And saying, hey, give me a list of all of the different, services or whatever that have had a failure within the last 5 minutes or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And it can pull that out without you needing to have proactively built, a whole system to be able to pull all that together. And I think that's where we're really going to see a lot of optimization when it comes to fixing those things.
Right.
But the to me, the challenge there though is building that knowledge kind of base. Right now, most places that I've been to don't really manage knowledge very well, whether it comes from system data, kind of the quantitative system data, or qualitative data, or even, documentation around services and processes. It's all kind of a mess. And, that's going to be a bit of a challenge even for AI to be able to decipher in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, you've mentioned documentation and maintaining knowledge and kind of being able to scale to grow correctly, I would say, as an organization. Mm-hmm. And I think that developer portals, in a way, it's I remember as a kid, I would buy an electronic device and I would get a huge manual with very little letters, and I would have to read to understand how to operate each thing. So I think this is how a developer experience looks like today with documentations and things like that. And developer portal is like an iPhone, or an Android. For those of you who prefer, I'm with an iPhone, but I just want to scroll naturally. I don't want to read a manual. I just want to do something that makes sense for me, right? So I think that being able to maintain knowledge over time is, I would say, also almost impossible. And developer portal is a way to create the product that gives people the right tooling to do something in an intuitive way without reading manuals with small letters. Yeah,
I agree, because you can get lost in the mountain of paperwork that exists around things. And, there's a kind of going back to the product mindset we were talking about earlier, what are the things that matter? Mm-hmm. And what are the things that we actually need to track, and the things that we need to spend the time, energy, and effort to be able to build that knowledge database on, to then be able to deliver optimizations on top of that as you kind of go along. And that to me is what I think we're seeing in a lot of these big kind of more tech companies. We've, heard a lot about, all the tech layoffs and everything else like that. Right. I don't think a lot of that actually has to do with AI quite yet, but I think a lot of that has to do with just internal optimizations and realizing that you don't necessarily need to do all of the things that you might be doing.
Exactly. And, just to refer on the product mindset, and, we talked a little bit about on how to embrace this kind of, mindset as a team. If you start with this initiative, so we created some very cool free tool for the community that we call the Roadmap Planner. It's about to be released in a few days, which allows you to kind of to put the user stories that you'd like to implement. And it asks you a few questions around, the usage frequency and the complexity of implementation. And it auto generates a priority score for you. So you can say, does it really, align with the value that I expect to give my developers or not? This is something that we created for the community to be used. Either if you are using any kind of tool in the market, if this is something that can help you, plan your roadmap for developer portal and embrace a product mindset. Would love to share it with everyone on the podcast.
Yeah, I would absolutely. I'd love to see it. Another interesting thing that's come up a couple of different times. We've talked about platform engineering. We've talked about developer portals, and there's also kind of the developer platforms that are out there. How do you kind of see some of this stuff? Do you see it kind of merging together as kind of the future comes? Does it kind of lean into what we were talking about with AI? But where do you kind of see platforms, DevX and dev portals and platforms? What do you think it's all going to come together?
So I think that I think that developer portals and developer platforms are two different things, and I like to separate the world into three parts. And of course, it's in my my kind of like understanding. So you have the portal. It's the experience. This is where you allow the end users to do stuff that they are providing them value, right? This is on the left side. On the right side, you have what we like to call, your platform pieces, right? Like everything that includes your cloud, your CI/CD, all your tools, security tools, on-call tools, all the things that you already did, infrastructure as code, Kubernetes, everything. Sometimes in the middle, you can create, a platform which provides some kind of an abstracted API to the platform pieces that can be used by the developer portal. So it can be in a shape of tools that are actual platforms, or you can also leverage your existing infrastructure like GitHub Actions that can also be a great API from a platform perspective, or CI/CD, or existing things that you already built. My suggestion is to start with, just a portal that connects to the underlying platform pieces. And then as time goes by, see if you actually need this extra layer of abstraction between the portal and the platform pieces. I don't think that the two things will, like the platform pieces and the portal will connect, because you need to decouple the experience from your technological choices. And your technology stack 100% will change in the upcoming few years, right? Like it's a natural thing to have, but you want to remain some kind of a consistent experience for your end user. So you do need to think about how you decouple between the experience that you give and your tech stack that needs to be transparent for the customer.
Yeah, I think that is a really, really good call out there. I see a lot of people trying to attach those things at the hip, and it doesn't really work out very well because you don't have that level of abstraction, like you said. And if, even if you're thinking about, like DevSecOps tools or whatever, I actually really like having that API layer in the middle, having your portal, having kind of a platform API, then having all of your tools underneath. Because at that point you can say, well, I need to call my security, like static analysis tool.
Right.
Well, you don't need to say, it's SonarQube and here's the direct SonarQube API. You can abstract that away. And now your platform teams can adjust and change and do what they need to with the tools underneath without really, having the app teams or anybody else that's consuming it really care.
Right.
You can also have CLIs and you can have your UI based, you can have your CLI based, and it gives you like ways of being able to, to kind of go and be able to push things forward.
Exactly. And, as a developer, like I would say, I don't have to know too much about the underlying platform, and that's okay. I can know if I want to, but don't make me, learn so much because I have so much work. So I think that, it's a good call out.
Well, that goes down to the cognitive load. And, there's what I would call the fallacy of a full stack developer for a long time, where it's gotten so hard to know all of these things. It's almost impossible now. And you add in all of these additional tools and complexity and everything else, and you just can't keep up. And, do you need to know the underlying fundamentals for your static code analysis tool? No. And so then why? If you have other bigger problems to solve than just some of that.
Exactly. And if you want to know, it's okay. Like, you're not blocked. You can take a look, but you don't have to. It's not a requirement, like from a developer perspective.
Yeah. So I guess, so from a port perspective, where are you guys going next? So, I mean, I know you've done a lot of really great stuff out there in the market. Where do you see kind of the future of kind of port, and what do you think the next little bit looks like?
Yeah. So, it is an exciting times for port, as we see this kind of like market is being evolving, and we see different organizations implementing different things with port. And what we see is the developer portal is generating interest for more teams, not just developers. So this is something that is exciting to see, because if you are a tech company, your developers obviously rely on your software, but you have other personas that also rely on this software. You have the product managers that want to see things with their Prisma, and you have the AppSec teams, and you have the sales team even that needs to provision a demo, right? They need a CI pipeline to run. So we believe that developer portal will expand into more personas that will soon become some kind of like a wider portal. So other team can enjoy from this phenomena as well. So this is where we see the market is headed.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting call out. The developer part of the portal starts to become a little bit of a question mark, because what exactly do you define as a developer? Is anybody that's a part of the software delivery lifecycle, part of the developer portal? And what do you keep in there versus what don't you keep in there? And, kind of going back to the knowledge management AI piece, if you're building that knowledge base and then deploying it through your developer portal, is it still a developer portal?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. I think there's, that's definitely a space that I've heard people talk about as well. Have you heard people talk about like data or anything like that, trying to pull in, all of the different data resources, and, a lot of the challenges that come from a developer portal stemmed from the kind of microservice transformation? You see a lot of that same thing happen in the data space. Wonder, have you ever heard anything there at all?
Yeah. I think also now with the with the explosion of AI and data teams and so on. So if you think about like an LLM model, or just like a traditional model, it has its own life cycle. An experiment can be thought of as like a CI/CD process, and it just makes sense to manage the life cycle of models as part of the AI, and to manage data sets as the code, right, with versions. So we see those kind of implementations as well. So data science teams, data teams, they have very similar challenges to what developers has from a life cycle perspective. They have code, and they have data. They have models, and they have microservices. But it's the same. It's the same challenges. And therefore, we see this phenomena of also data teams and data science teams want to manage their lifecycle as part of a portal. And this is part of the, as what we see as, this market is going through, this kind of like behaviors. And the nice thing about portal is that because the solution gives you a lot of power with what you can do with it, once you install the template and you got up and running with some MVP, some other teams start to understand like what they can do with those building blocks. And then we learn from them what they do with port, which is very cool. And the data use case is definitely something that we started seeing recently.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy when you build these platforms and tools, and you think in your mind is like, oh, this is exactly how I think people will use it. And then they use it in very different ways that are almost, they're a little baffling sometimes, but it's really creative.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess, any other kind of thoughts or things that, you see kind of looking out in the future or just anything else that kind of comes to your mind?
I think that like one last point is that I think that the platform engineering phenomena is something that many platform teams and many DevOps teams realize that it's needed. And now we are starting to go towards the second wave of education, which is for the developers. And this one is the exciting one because this is the big ocean, right? Like to have developers kind of like embrace a new mindset of redefining their lives in a way. And I think that this is an interesting thing to see, from a market perspective, to see how developers kind of like onboard into it. And we believe that, what works for us is thinking about the developers, engaging them from an early process, and listen to them. Just listen to them and try to understand like what they need actually. But I think that their lives are currently in a process to be redefined, and the experience that they have today will be very, very different. Just like a few years from now, which is exciting to see, and look what will happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The days of kind of chaos and everything else don't need to be there. And we have kind of the tools and technologies to be able to smooth all that out and hopefully to be able to improve not only, kind of developer satisfaction, but drive a lot better productivity and everything else across the board.
Exactly.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's always lovely chatting with you. I love what you guys have put together, and I hope we can chat again here soon.
Perfect. And Chris, thank you so much for having me. And I can't believe we are past 50 minutes. It was super fast.
I know, it really does. Well, thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Chris.